Hey everyone, Ben Coomber Radio, episode number 258. Now, I'm a big fan of, in any environment that you're broadening your network. Like, whatever you do, whatever industry you're in, broaden your network. And so I went to a bit of a business kind of event that was all based around companies in the health sector, and we're all meeting up in London. It's by a great company called Enterprise Nation. So I went to try and see what was happening in the health market, more so in the product side of the health market. So there was companies there that were, selling alternative protein powders and, natural skincare and all that kind of stuff. Anyway, aside from that, there was a day of learning, great day of learning. And if you are in the fitness industry, a lot of you are self-employed, make sure you are going out there and broadening your market, speaking to people and engaging with what is happening outside of your bubble, within the studio, whatever. Anyway, I met a great guy while I was there at the day, someone that is running a business to do with mental health in London. Now, we have talked an awful lot on the podcast of recent about mental health, about mindset, about the emotional drivers that we have to achieve our goals, and I kind of got a bit of a slightly refreshing angle on what we have already talked about from speaking with James briefly and hearing about what he does. So James Rontledge, welcome to the show. Hello.
Cheers, mate. Thanks for having me. Very nice introduction.
Luckily, I like the sound of my own voice, so when I get told to talk, I kind of have an opportunity to fill lots of space. Mate, this is today. This is all about you. This is all about the awareness that you're trying to bring to mental health, which I think is incredible. Tell me who James is and what the story is into why you are so passionate about mental health.
Yeah. So mental health never used to be like a thing, really. Like growing up, I've never really been touched by it. I just thought it was something that happened to like other people, really, which is mad now when I think about it, but that was just like my perception of it. And kind of started out of the back of university. I started a business which didn't go so well, long story short. And when I went into actually having a job, I suppose the first time in the real world, when I was about 24, I just started to feel what I can only describe as like weird, to be honest. And I think the first thing I noticed was that like, unlike, when you've got a cold or, you've got an injury to your knee or your elbow or your shoulder or whatever, you're well versed in what that pain is. Whereas when I started to feel like anxious, off, couldn't sleep, didn't quite feel right, I couldn't really like articulate that. I had no idea kind of what was going on. And I was working in this like small business. It was like 50, 60 people. And I just felt, like I said, just weird, basically. And it turns out I was really anxious all the time. Like I was sort of sweaty palms, knot in my stomach. And I felt like the level of nerves that I've only ever felt before playing a big game of like football or like, going on and doing a presentation or something. And I sort of felt that constantly. And I just didn't know why that was, really. And I kept trying to search for why it was. And I suppose because of the sort of current perception of mental health, that it's kind of perceived as weak, really, especially in the workplace and just in general. And I suppose in like quite a large culture, I just didn't really say anything, just kept going about my day, just going on nights out, putting Instagram photos up as if I was all fine. But on the inside, I was struggling, really. And again, I didn't show any weakness. I didn't want to show that I didn't have it all figured out. I suppose I identified with myself as this like, sort of strong character, strong, composed, intelligent guy that would never really struggle with anything like that. Was the kind of thing that I used to say stuff like, I don't get stressed. And suddenly I was feeling very anxious and having panic attacks. So really quite like sort of manifesting a lot. And my outlet, really, rather than, I didn't go to my GP, sort of too proud for that. Didn't go into therapy because didn't get it and couldn't afford it, to be honest. And nothing out there in mental health. Like when I Googled mental health, it just came up with like depression, suicide, disorders. And none of that like related to me, really. So my outlet was basically writing about it. And underneath Sanctus, I just started to write about my own experience and just talk about mental health again in this way that I personally could relate to, and talk about mental health and fitness, and talk about mental health as an entire spectrum of when you're actually not feeling great and you're kind of low on the spectrum, just like you might be when you're a bit out of shape, or you're a bit, you've put some weight on, or you're not as fit as you'd like to be, all the way to them talking about how great it was for me to talk about it, really. Because as I was opening up and talking about mental health, the response I was getting was insane. I was getting hundreds and hundreds of emails off the back of blog posts and newsletters and whatnot. So I knew I'd really hit a nerve with people. And that's where I that's where I started Sanctus, to essentially rebrand mental health and change the perception of it. So that people don't just talk about this like dark, depressing side of mental health. They also talk about the really uplift and the positive side of mental health, and what can happen actually if you start to, actually talk about your feelings and how certain things affect you, and the positive impact that can have on your life. So that's kind of what Sanctus is setting out to do. Big goal to put the first ever mental health gym on the high street, and kind of be like the Nike of mental fitness, and inspire people to get mentally fitter, not just deal with their problems when they hit a breaking point, basically.
So you never had a moment, like where an episode in your life where there was almost like a momentary breakdown and it made you really kind of evaluate things? It sounds like it was just almost like really organic for you.
Well, I would call that period. I had a period of about 9 months where I definitely wasn't myself. I was anxious. I don't think I was a great person to be around, to be honest. Like, I don't think I was a brilliant mate. And that was a tough period. Like, I felt pretty low at that point. And there was a couple of moments which I could, specific moments I can remember being this isn't right. Especially like panic attacks for me in particular. Like, I remember having a panic attack at Old Street Tube Station, and just like it's a real sort of like intense feeling, heart pounding, out of breath, feeling sick, sort of palms like sweating loads, and just feeling really scared. And that was probably, it was those panic attacks and that were the really severe moments of anxiety that really made me like rethink what was going on and take notice. No matter how stubborn I was being, like, if that starts to happen to your body, like, you've kind of got to listen to it, really.
I think the really nice thing that I'm getting from you right now is that quite often, especially in fitness industry, everyone lives in an extreme to a degree. And what's nice is that you haven't been in this extreme situation. You kind of you never had a major breakdown. There wasn't this kind of epiphany moment, but the reason why I think that's important is so many people are going to be able to relate to your story, because there's a lot of people that genuinely are feeling, however they describe it, a bit crap, low. They're starting to get anxious. They're starting to get more reclusive. And actually, what we now do is you now widen the net to help more people by saying, actually, it's not particularly great to spend every day feeling a little bit anxious and a little bit worried, because on the podcast previously we've talked about people that are maybe very negative and are doing a lot of very destructive behaviours, which is again a little bit more of an extreme environment. But I want to bring everyone back and say, actually, let's really get on top and open up the discussion around mental health in a very accessible way. And I was reading your blog earlier on today, and we'll give the links to your blog at the end, because you're a really good writer. The way that you kind of classify and contextualise your thoughts, I think, is really nice. And you were talking about mental health being like physical fitness. So I suppose, what does that mean to you? Why do people need to see mental health like they would their physical health?
Yeah, well, it's kind of what you just said. I mean, like, at the end of the day, your mental health, just like your physical health, is a spectrum, all the way from someone who might be like being very self-destructive and might be quite low on the low end of that spectrum. Obviously people are mentally ill. People have severe depression, severe anxiety to the point where they really can't cope. That might be the equivalent of doing your ACL or breaking your arm or breaking your leg or whatever it might be, or having a really bad back injury that like really debilitates you. That may be the equivalent of that. But then you also might have people that like maybe like me were really just not feeling right for a prolonged period of time. That did kind of manifest itself, but nothing. It's not like I was standing on top of the building or anything like that. All the way to then you've got the other end of the spectrum. You've got people who, on a daily basis, we all have moments of I'm having a shit day or I don't feel great today, and then to people who are actually feeling like they're in a good place, but believe that could get even mentally stronger from there. By becoming more confident or more empathetic and having better relationships with people. So it really is. It's a spectrum in exactly the same way as your physical health is. And I think by opening up the conversation that way, I think what you do is you unlock people that actually aren't feeling low yet, because unfortunately, most people right now with their mental health wait until they can't cope. Then they do something about it. And what we want to do is like you said, widen that net completely, so that actually people are having a conversation about their mental health when they feel great. And it's just like so you get stronger, so you don't break your leg. It's kind of that analogy.
So coming back to this kind of emotion around mental health of people feeling like they can't talk about it. So this is a two-part question. What do you feel is stopping people from talking about it? Is it just that old school stigma of like, don't be weak? And how did you start to develop the confidence within yourself to talk about what the problem was?
Yeah, good question. So to answer the first part of it, I think the word stigma gets sort of bandied around a lot in relation to mental health. And I think, in my opinion, when I look back at my own experience, there was a slight bit about what I thought that others would think of me. But really, it was me not wanting to admit it to myself that stopped me talking about it. No one was stopping me. I wasn't in an environment where people were like, saying outright, you're not allowed to talk about this. It was me who wasn't talking about it. So I think what stops people talking about it is their perception of mental health and probably their view of themselves in many ways. Like, it's because we've got such a lack of awareness that I think, and a lack of understanding and education, that we don't talk about it, because you don't want to talk about it because you're scared. So I actually think it's us as individuals that are holding back the conversation. We can't keep blaming this stigma for it. Do you know what I mean? You've got to take ownership of your own mental health and your own, let's say, challenges. And then second one, about building up the confidence to talk about it. That, for me, I think that took a long time, and I definitely think, I hope with a brand like Sanctus, we can speed up that time, because I think it does take a while to, one, kind of become aware of what's going on. Secondly, then work out what it is. And then thirdly, have the confidence and, I suppose, the language to articulate that and actually talk about it. For me, that's been a long process, and it's an ongoing process as well. Like, I'm still learning about mental health and what mental health is to me, how I work best. Still going on this whole process of sort of self-discovery. The first thing I did was write in a journal. So I had a journal where I used to just like sort of document randomly and just occasionally document like my day and how I was feeling and stuff. So I started to do that, and then eventually start talking to the people around me, friends, to the point where now I'll do a lot of one-on-one coaching or group coaching and share it with other people.
I think, in my experience, the whole journaling thing is most powerful when there's kind of this anxious feeling around a situation that we blow up. And I'll be honest, I've never had experience in coaching anyone with panic attacks. I've had someone in my family that have had them before, but for me, kind of just thinking about it rationally now, a panic attack is maybe a situation where you perceive something to have occurred and you start to self-talk the situation to basically grow into a massive monster. and then it becomes that uncontrollable that it starts to become a physical reality. And what I've experienced with journaling is the only way to really and properly contextualise and rationalise the situation is to see the words and how you feel on paper, because then it becomes real, and you actually then succinctly put your thoughts onto paper rather than just running around your brain like a set of fireworks. Is that kind of a similar experience for you?
Oh, I would say so, yeah. I think for me it was just, a journal is the most non-judgmental space you can get. You know, it's a blank piece of paper, like it's not going to talk back to you or judge you in any way. So it was a good space for me to start to even just verbalise what I was feeling and write it down somewhere and sort of contextualise it and sort of see it. And it kind of feels a little bit more real when it's down on paper. I think personally what I feel about journaling is that it's a great tool to help you build up your own confidence to then speak to someone. I think I've never come across a sort of situation of mental health that's not been aided by actually talking to someone. I think, we very much believe that we want to get people to the point where they can kind of share with another human, basically. I think a lot of issues in mental health can come from isolation. People close themselves off and don't feel a sense of connection, don't actually share anything with another person. So I think journaling is a great way to build yourself up to that point, basically, where you actually talk about how you're feeling with someone.
So with feeling isolated, do you think the modern environment of technology is making people more isolated or giving people more access to help? Because I can't but sometimes feel that because we have so much potential engagement in the online world, that people have a massive opportunity to become very reclusive.
Yeah, I think with technology you can't. A lot of people blame technology, and especially blame social media, Facebook and Instagram and Snapchat in particular, for its effect on people's mental health. And there's absolutely no doubt that it's having an influence and an impact. Yeah, it's about your relationship with it. You could argue that people use social media in particular to hide, and they present an image of their life that's not true to them. And that does isolate them because they're not actually sharing what's real. But, there are other people out there that use social media in a really positive way just to express themselves and to share who they are. So I do think it's about your relationship with it. But at the same time, I don't think there's no coincidence that mental health is, in its awareness and its need, is increasing so much. I think it's got to have something to do with how addicted we all are, essentially, to our smartphones and again, social media in particular. So I think it is definitely playing a part in isolating, and people isolating themselves. So I think it's easy. I think it's easy to do. It's really easy to hide behind the veneer of an Instagram filter. It's a lot harder to go out into the real world and speak to your mate and tell them how you're feeling. It cuts off a lot of that human connection. And I think, if anything, it's a bit deep, but I think a lot of us have forgot how to be human, and actually how to engage with each other.
Yeah, I think the amount of people that because working in the fitness industry and teaching other people, the amount of personal trainers that have put themselves in a coaching environment where you have to go and talk to people and break that kind of everyday ice of just saying hello, the amount of people that are scared of that situation. And I'm like, but you've chosen to do a job where you have to talk to people, you have to be human. And actually, because we, for me, live so much within our phones now, we have forgot to just smile and say hello.
Yeah,
and that feels a bit sad.
Yeah, it's sad, and I think we're numb in many ways, and I think it's also almost desensitized us to flat feelings and how we actually feel, because we feel everything through a smartphone, basically.
So, one of the blogs that I enjoyed that I was reading earlier on today is that your personal journey because you're building a business, you're building Sanctus, you're trying to raise mental awareness, but you're also someone that's, I'm going to say constantly battling your mental health, because I think one of the things you highlighted in this blog is that you'll never eradicate who you are and what has made an impression and built your mental health to date. We just have a greater self-awareness of what that is, and then we develop better coping and controlling mechanisms to deal with that.
Yeah.
And you're now trying to kind of really balance this, being ambitious, chasing your goals, building a business, raising awareness, but also taking time out, looking after yourself, being physically active. Do you kind of, I suppose, where is this balance between this kind of, because there's definitely an entrepreneur culture right now, and it's only growing. Like, people are saying work from home, build your business, do all that kind of stuff, and that's amazing, but everyone's really struggling with that balance. And I'm not going to lie, I've been through periods where I've struggled with that balance, and I feel quite good about the balance that I have. And I've put myself in an environment where it's very easy to have balance. Like, I live in the countryside and I commit to walking my dog for 20 minutes twice a day. So I'm always getting that kind of time out. So kind of talk me through where you're at with that journey with yourself. So I find it fascinating.
No, it's a really difficult one, to be honest. I mean, obviously it would be the biggest irony in the world if I was to kind of burn out building a business that was trying to help people not do that. So it is. I want to, and I obviously strive to practice what I preach, and kind of lead by example in that sense as well. I share my journey very publicly by my newsletter and videos and stuff as well. So I think if I was to start to be being disingenuous to suppose the Sanctus community and audience by living in a mentally unhealthy way, then that wouldn't kind of be fair to them, I suppose. But I won't lie, like, it is hard, because I think at the end of the day, starting a business is hard. Like, you do have to probably make a few sacrifices. You probably do have to work longer hours than maybe you would in a standard 9-to-5 job. So it is difficult. And I think the other thing about a business, which definitely happened to me in my last business, is it can sort of consume your identity. And before you know it, if your life's a sort of a pie chart, your business is 90% of who you are, and there's nothing else there, and it can kind of consume you. So it's definitely something I'm very very aware of. But I think the difference is that I'm just aware of it, really, and I think it just comes down to you knowing yourself. And I think just like anything with your mental health, or even with your physical health and just your well-being in general, you've got to take time for yourself initially and create space for yourself, whether it's walking the dog, whatever, to actually work out. One, sit there and ask yourself, like, how actually am I today? Like, how am I feeling? And then just work out what does work for you. Like, do I need to take a 2-week holiday every quarter? Do I need to take regular? Do I need to make sure I get out of London at the weekends? Whatever it might be. So I'm just very conscious of actually working out what's best for me, and just taking as much time for myself as possible. And when I say for myself, I don't just mean like, going out for drinks with my mates. Like, that is for me as well, but I mean like time on my own. I mean exercise, maybe meditation, journaling, things that just I do for me, basically.
You've already mentioned a couple, so you might have already hijacked my next question, but we've talked about your background in feeling anxious, having panic attacks, feeling a bit low. We've now talked about bridging this gap between being ambitious but also looking after your mental health. You then talked about kind of physical activity, bit of meditation, time on your own. Is there anything else in your lifestyle that is part of your routine that enables you to more positively manage your mental health that you kind of haven't touched on already?
I'd say the biggest one on top of all those really has just been me being more open with how I actually feel. So actually letting the people around me in. So having a group of people, not loads, like my girlfriend, my co-founder, and like actually having people that I really trust, that if I am not feeling good, I can really, really share with them like what's going on in my life. And I think that's been the biggest game changer for me, really, because that solves this problem of isolating yourself, basically having those people in your life that you don't lie to, and you sort of say it how it is. Things like meditation and journaling and even with my physical, my sort of exercise routine, they they change. You know, how I use them changes every now and again. But actually having a certain set of people around me that I sort of actually really share with is pretty much a constant. And then obviously through Sanctus, I do both sort of one-on-one and group coaching as well, which really helps.
Would you? I suppose it's kind of my last question. I'm always intrigued by. We've talked about the stigma, and I kind of want to look at it a little bit differently in that, especially for men, and I suppose for women, like looking at it a different way, women would often feel that they are being too much of a burden on other people by sharing too much of their emotions. But for men, and this kind of weakness, like I've personally found, the more I can be open and insanely vulnerable, like I've talked about my counselling, my childhood, all sorts of stuff on this podcast. I'm immensely vulnerable, but the only thing that's done to the people that listen to this podcast is build trust, and they're able to relate to me even more. So I suppose I don't know, you might end up repackaging my question, but how do we get people to make that step to prove to them that it is not weak being immensely open about how you feel?
I think you've got to, for want of a better phrase, you've got to sell it to them. You've got to show people actually how powerful it is, like you say, to be vulnerable and to be open. And actually, what's the business case for that? You know, like, why is it good to do? Because you're right, it's pretty transformative in many ways. It builds trust with people. You can be more yourself. You don't have to. It's not, you don't have to have that exhausting thing of thinking, oh God, like what front and what mask am I putting on right now? It's just like, this is just me, and I can be open. So it's massively sort of life changing, pretty much. And I think the only way we're going to get that across is to just show it to people. And I think, you know, more and more people opening up, especially people with maybe a big reputation or celebrities or whatever, being openly vulnerable and honest, like Rio Ferdinand on TV the other day, you know, in the documentary he did. I think people are going to start to see that and look and think, that's not weak, that's actually really strong. And I think that's the way, I suppose, you know, I see it as a movement, really. You know, that we all, at Sanctus, we talk about starting a movement, and it's just a movement of people just opening up and just putting their hand up and just saying, look, like, this is the kind of way I live my life, I suppose, and this is why it's so good.
James, I'd love people to be able to find you after today. I think some of the stuff we've touched on has been hugely valuable. I've mentioned your writing's brilliant, so I think people need to be reading your blogs. If they want to be on your newsletter, then awesome. So where is the best place to find you and what you guys are doing?
So best website is sanctus.io, and then Instagram and Twitter is probably where we're most active, which is at Sanctus London LDN. Okay,
and that's Sanctus SANCTUS.
LDN, yeah.
LDN. All right, awesome. Anywhere else you want to send people or say, this is really cool, you need to check it out, seeing as you're on the podcast, and now's the chance to raise any awareness of anything else?
Nah, just follow us, and then you'll see. The jumpers will be out.
Awesome.
Yeah,
just see other people know. I know there's a huge amount of people from all walks of life that listen to this podcast. James and the Sanctus team go into businesses and do a lot of coaching around mental health in businesses, as well as doing coaching in groups in London to help people out. So there's a lot that they kind of do that he's kind of being very, very humble in not saying that he does. So if any of that is of interest to you guys, then reach out to James. But honestly, go and check out the blog. Really valuable information there. I've enjoyed some of his writing. And James, it just leaves me to say thank you for coming on the show.
Cheers, mate. Absolute pleasure. Thank you.
All the best with raising awareness. For everyone that's listening, I will be back next week as standard. Who will be with me? Let me just check. It will be my new co-host, because as you would have learned from last week, we are moving the show into a slightly different direction. Anyway, whatever you're doing, have an awesome week. That's me out, and I will see you next week. Goodbye. Number 256.